What if the most devastating weapon in Star Wars wasn't a Death Star, a Sith lightning storm, or a red lightsaber, but a single sentence spoken calmly into a hologram? Not shouted, not celebrated, just issued like routine paperwork. Execute Order 66. In that quiet moment, the Jedi Order, guardians of peace for over 1,000 generations, was effectively erased. Not by overwhelming force, not by open war, but by trust, procedure, and a system designed to betray them the instant it was activated. Order 66 was not chaos, it was choreography, and that is what makes it terrifying. A republic already on the edge. By the final days of the Clone Wars, the Galactic Republic was no longer a functioning democracy. It was a system running on exhaustion. Years of continuous warfare had trained the Senate to accept emergency powers as routine and fear as governance. What began as temporary authority became permanent control. Every crisis justified another exception. Every exception quietly rewrote the rules. The Senate no longer asked whether the war should end, only how much more power was required to manage it. Debate shrank. Oversight faded. Stability replaced liberty as the highest ideal. The Jedi were pulled into this collapse without realizing the cost. Once neutral peacekeepers, they became frontline generals commanding vast clone armies across the galaxy. They occupied worlds, enforced Republic decisions, and made battlefield choices that inevitably led to civilian suffering. This shift didn't make the Jedi villains, but it made them visible. And in politics, visibility is vulnerability. The more present the Jedi became in war, the easier it was to associate them with violence rather than protection. Palpatine understood this better than anyone. He never needed to defeat the Jedi in open combat. He only needed to reframe them. Guardians slowly became soldiers. Soldiers became political actors. Political actors became threats, and once something is perceived as a threat, its removal can be sold as necessity. The Jedi were not destroyed by force alone. They were destroyed by narrative. Brothers with a kill switch. The tragedy of Order 66 does not begin with blaster fire. It begins at conception. The clone troopers were engineered for loyalty, discipline, and unquestioning obedience, traits celebrated as virtues during wartime. They were raised together, trained together, and sent into battle with a sense of shared purpose. Over time, many clones formed genuine bonds with the Jedi they served under. They trusted them, respected them. In some cases, they owed their lives to them. But beneath that brotherhood was something far darker. Embedded within every clone was an inhibitor chip, a biological control mechanism designed to override independent thought under specific circumstances. Order 66 was not simply a command issued from above. It was a trigger, one that bypassed loyalty, emotion, and morality in a single instant. That revelation changes the meaning of the betrayal. The clones did not collectively decide to turn on the Jedi. Many of them would never have chosen to. But when the order was given, choice ceased to exist. The betrayal was not personal, it was mechanical. Friendship, memory, and trust were all overridden by design. That is why the phrase, "good soldiers follow orders," lands with such weight in retrospect. It isn't a motto of discipline. It's a warning about what happens when obedience is engineered rather than earned. The moment trust became a weapon. When Order 66 was issued, the galaxy did not erupt into chaos, it froze. Across distant battlefields and remote worlds, Jedi fell within seconds. Some were shot in the back while issuing commands to troops they believed were allies. Others sensed a sudden disturbance in the Force, just long enough to turn around. Years of shared battles ended in a single, silent blaster shot. Trust, built slowly over time, became the very thing that made the massacre possible. The Jedi did not lose because they were outmatched or unskilled. They lost because they believed the system they defended could not be turned against them so completely, so quickly. They trusted the Republic to remain what it had always been. They trusted the clones as comrades. They trusted procedure, legitimacy, and order, and all of it was weaponized. Order 66 worked because the Jedi never imagined that the Republic itself would become the executioner. They prepared for Sith Lords, invasions, and open war. They were not prepared for betrayal wrapped in legality. The fall of the Jedi Temple. If the galaxy-wide purge was the body blow, the assault on the Jedi Temple was the execution of an idea. The temple was not just a headquarters, it was history made stone, a place of learning, meditation, and continuity. Generations of Jedi had passed through its halls. Younglings learned not only how to wield the Force, but how to restrain it. Archives preserved centuries of knowledge. The temple represented the future of the Order, and that is why it had to fall. Its destruction was not about efficiency, it was about symbolism. The attack was carried out openly, decisively, and led by a fallen Jedi at the head of clone battalions. The message was unmistakable. The Jedi were no longer guardians of peace. They were enemies of the state. By dawn, the heart of the Order was burning, its students dead or scattered, its teachings reduced to rubble. From that moment on, the Jedi ceased to exist as a public institution. They were no longer leaders, generals, or protectors. They became whispers, legends, ghosts, a coup that looked like justice. Palpatine's greatest achievement was not the purge itself, it was how easily it was accepted. Order 66 did not look like tyranny, it looked like security. Within hours, the official narrative was already complete. The Jedi had attempted to overthrow the Republic. The Chancellor had narrowly survived assassination. Emergency measures were framed as reluctant, but necessary. The extermination of the Jedi was presented not as genocide, but as defense. And the galaxy believed it. That belief mattered more than the blaster fire. Because Order 66 did not succeed only because the Jedi were killed, it succeeded because the public accepted the lie. Fear filled the gaps where truth should have lived. Relief replaced outrage. Stability was chosen over scrutiny. By the time the Republic transformed into the Empire, most citizens didn't feel conquered. They felt saved. And that is the most dangerous kind of victory of all. Survivors, guilt, and the aftermath. Not every clone complied perfectly. Not every Jedi died. And those cracks in the system are where later stories live. Some clones experienced chip malfunctions, others had their chips removed. A small number resisted, fled, or were left behind by the machine that no longer needed them. For them, Order 66 wasn't a moment, it was a lifelong wound. For surviving Jedi, life became concealment. No temples, no councils, no reinforcements, just whispers, aliases, and the constant knowledge that the galaxy now saw them as traitors. The war was over, but the damage had only begun. Why the Jedi fell? So completely. The Jedi Order didn't collapse because it lacked power. It collapsed because it misunderstood the battlefield. They prepared for dark lords and invasions, not legislation and loyalty protocols. They trained to sense aggression, not administrative betrayal. Their faith in balance blinded them to manipulation. Palpatine didn't defeat the Jedi by being stronger in the Force. He defeated them by understanding institutions, fear, and timing better than they ever did. The Jedi expected a war. They got an audit. Why Order 66 still matters. Decades after its first appearance, Order 66 continues to echo through Star Wars storytelling because it represents a universal fear. The idea that systems we trust can be weaponized against us without warning. It is the night democracy quietly applauded its own execution. The night obedience overrode morality. The night heroes learned, too late, that legitimacy can be more dangerous than brute force. Order 66 wasn't loud, it wasn't chaotic, it was efficient, and that is why it worked. And that's the real horror of Order 66. Not the blaster fire, not the fallen lightsabers, but how easily a galaxy accepted it once fear was dressed up as safety. The Jedi didn't just lose a war, they lost the story. And when that happens, power no longer needs to hide. If this video changed how you see Order 66, the Clone Wars, or the fall of the Republic, you're in the right place. If you want to be smarter every day, like and subscribe.